Order, Madam Speaker.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer and meditation. You may be seated. Good morning, honorable members. I'm not sure I see there's a bag there, but let me say the Premier, Leader of Government Business, just in case, MECs, the Chief Whip, members of the Provincial Legislature, our guest that is with us. I only see one, I'm not sure who is who, but welcome to this House proceeding that we are having this morning. I think yesterday, and for the first time, I must say, the Premier shocked me, Leader of Government Business, because I was looking that we would finish at around 4. I could not believe we were out in that time. So yes, but today, let's first start with the procedural issues. As you have noticed, we are citing Rule 79.1 in terms of the standing rules. For those members that we have noticed that is not dressed appropriately, and we will just ask the Sergeant-at-Arms to identify them so that they are referred to the Ethics Committee in terms of Rule 107 for further investigation. That's all that we do around those matters, honorable members. We have quite a day ahead of us with the matter of public importance as well as the consideration of the Portfolio Committee visits. It's almost plus minus 5-hour session, so I think we must use our time as speedily as possible. Thank you so much. Let me get everything out of. Yes, I do note to say that I've just been informed that actually we do have an acting premier. My apologies, it's just been brought to my notice. We do have an acting, and it's MEC Mvoko. My apologies, MEC Mvoko. I just saw a bag there, and I assumed it was the Premier's bag. But honourable members, I think Premier yesterday alluded to the fact that we are now entering Human Rights Month. This is the month where we celebrate, we commemorate human rights in all its forms. It also affords us as a legislature an opportunity to debate some of these issues that is affecting us as a society. And we must understand that we cannot move forward. Honourable Stevenson, I do not want to hear you. I do not want to hear your discussion, which I can quote verbatim to you what you are saying. Do not do that. Just softly. Yes. So that we can look forward, but also not forgetting where we are coming from. It's very important in 29 years of democracy that we never forget where we are coming from, but we also need to understand that the societal ills of today it runs far deeper, and we really need to be innovative in the programs that we have as government, in the engagements with our community to ensure that a culture of human rights will forever be ingrained within the South African society. With the lawlessness and the criminal element out there, you can clearly see that somewhere or other, as government, as NGOs, as society, and yesterday Premier put the point succinctly that as parents, not enough is being done to ingrain that in our youngsters, in our children at home at that foundation level, to ensure that when they reach the age of maturity, that those values is instilled in them to appreciate what it means. And the human rights that we just take for granted these days are just, taken as in jail. I think we really need as a legislature to dig deep in the work that we are doing. How do we ensure that whatever we do, we continuously inculcate, and we don't just leave this to DESREC and we leave it to the social development to deal with these, but I think each and every portfolio committee, each and every political party represented here needs to ensure that in our constituency work, we foster a culture for human rights within our work. Honourable members, we will now go to notices of motions, and I have again received 6 notices of motions. Let me read them out so that we can understand who we have left out, because sometimes political parties do inform us just before we get into the House that they've actually sent us stuff that we may not have received. I do have Honourable Makashela, Honourable Fishlani, Honourable Mbonyana, Honourable Anil Kumar, Honourable Nyalambisa, and Honourable Stevenson in that order. I hope I have not let anybody out. Yes, Honourable Zabula. I will confer with the secretariat if you. We have not received anything, Honourable Zabula. You cannot in the House want to raise a notice of motion. That is why I said that is my table staff will always inform me where we have left names out that we have possibly received just before coming into the House. Let's stick to the rules, the standing rules of the legislature in that regard. Also, I have received that actually the Honourable Chief Whip again has got 2 motions. And so he will then be doing both, if that is acceptable to you, Honourable Chief Whip, in that regard. And here is the letter basically attesting that the second one was part of the first one. Thank you so much. So may I then upon this call upon the Chief Whip, Honourable Makashela, to proceed with his notice of motion.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Greetings to you, the members of the executive, members of the provincial legislature, and our support staff. Madam Speaker, I move without notice in terms of Rule 130 that the House, in terms of the powers afforded to it by Rule 3.1, suspend the provisions of Rule 73.3, which provides that a committee report may not be debated in the House unless it has been circulated to all members of the legislature at least 2 days prior to the intended debate. This relates to the order number 2 of today, 2nd March 2023, in that the report on Portfolio Committee on Economic Development, Environmental Affairs and Tourism on oversight visits to gambling, betting and liquor operations in Amatol, Buffalo City, Nelson Mandela and Sarah Baartman regions be debated, notwithstanding that the report was published on the 1st of March 2023. I so move, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Makashela. Honourable members, I put this for adoption to the House. Agreed. Thank you. Second one.
Thanks once again, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I move without notice in terms of Rule 130 that the House notes this day in history as an important day in South Africa's road to the democracy we enjoy today. The 2nd of March marks the day that the public announcement was made on the date of South Africa's founding elections in 1994. Further notes that this was a pivotal step in kickstarting the process of creating a more inclusive society and ending years of penury and long-standing suffering that was faced by the black majority under white minority rule. The black majority finally had a voice that could be heard in what was to be the first democratic election and all other succeeding elections. Acknowledges that securing the era of democracy, hope, reconciliation, social cohesion, nation building was a journey that was far from being swift or smooth. It was a journey that was lined with the blood of our forebears that were victims of unprecedented racial abuse, political violence, and wars to strip them of all dignity and dispossess them of the land of their forefathers. Further acknowledges that we are still on course to fulfilling the commitments ANC's 1994 election manifesto and building a better life for all. We are steadfast in reducing inequality, poverty, and unemployment, expropriating the land without compensation, tipping the scale of economic opportunity towards the advantage of previously disadvantaged groups, and providing social nets that are developmental in character to improve the quality of life of those who are in need. As we approach the next general elections in 2024, we call on provincial government and this august house to intensify civic education and ensure that the electorate is conscious of the importance of voting. Further, for the government to work towards reviving the public's trust in our democracy and to renew the hope of the masses of our people in what we had promised to achieve in a democratic South Africa by drastically improving the pace and quality of service delivery, uprooting corruption, and rebuilding the economy. I so move. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Chief Whip, honourable members. I put the motion without notice for adoption.
Agreed.
We will note that, Honourable Stevenson. Thanks. We will now go to Honourable Fishlani.
Honourable Speaker, I move without notice in terms of Rule 130 that the House observes that last week the Kula Children's Rights Organization reported a teacher who allegedly forced primary school pupils in grade 2 to clean up after she vomited in their classroom. This reportedly happened at Nyibiba Primary School in Ugid, Jogabi. This comes after reports of a grade 6 learner who was lowered into a pit latrine toilet to remove the school principal's phone in 2021. Note that the aforementioned incidents and other violations of children's rights perpetrated by those who should be the guardians of children in the school environment is surely an indicator of abusive behaviors that continue to foster within the schooling system, even after the ban of corporal punishment and enactment of various statutes and policies which are meant to protect the children's rights. Acknowledge that the development of a positive teacher-pupil relationship seems to be defective and this undermines the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which guarantees the inherent dignity of children in every other South African and protects them from cruelty, inhuman treatment, and any other form of degradation. Take into consideration that whilst we applaud the Eastern Cape Department of Education for not failing to take swift action against the perpetrators of various forms of children abuse in schools, we called for a proactive action in building a positive school culture and to capacitate teachers with the necessary soft skills which will help them cultivate good parent-pupil relationship while striking a balance with asserting their authority and discipline. Note that the school is responsible for safeguarding pupils from harm and abuse while they are on the premises. Therefore, reasonable actions must be taken to ensure that schools are safe, caring, and welcoming learning environment that supports the rollout of a quality education that produces future leaders. I so move, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Fishlani. Honourable members, I put it for adoption.
Agreed.
Thank you. We now call upon Honourable Mbonyana.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Allow me, Honourable Speaker, to observe the protocol that has already been established. Honourable Speaker, I move a notice of motion in terms of Rule 131 of the Standing Rules of Eastern Cape Provincial Legislature for this House to note the following. Number 1, persons with disabilities are human beings with life just like any other person. Number 2, the Bill of Rights protects everyone, including persons with disability, some of them whom largely are referred to as destitute. The motion, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, deeply and without fear or favor acknowledge the excellent work and measures that have been put in place by the ruling party to ensure that disabled people, especially those that fall under the category of destitute, have access to basic amenities of life, including access to housing, and are able to live a dignified life despite their personal circumstances. Number 3, that Section 7, subsection 2 of the Constitution respect, protects, promote, and fulfill every right in the Bill of Rights. That government must ensure that no one is prejudiced over the public service. Lastly, that Section 10 of the Constitution protects the rights to human dignity, and that dignity is achieved when all people, including disabled and destitute persons, have access to basic amenities of life, including housing, and access to social assistance such as grant, etc. That housing and social protection, among others, contribute to a dignified life. Therefore, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Members, I move that the House resolve on the following: that government fast-track access to basic amenities life, including access to adequate housing for people living with disabilities. That government must ensure compliance with employment equity of the people living with disability in the province and submit the report to the House on a quarterly basis. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, that we motivate the oversight committees in this House to ensure that disabled and destitute people are prioritized regarding access to the basic amenities of life and employment. This will ensure, honorable members, that they receive access without delay and unreasonable bureaucratic processes. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Bonyana. Honorable members, we note the motion and it will be debated at a later stage in accordance with Rule 133(1). I now call upon Honorable Anil Kumar.
Honorable Speaker, honorable members, let me pass the warmest greeting from our glorious movement, African National Congress. Honorable Speaker, I rise to give notice of motion in terms of Rule 131 of the Standing Rules. Local economic development activity is essential, and it can act as a catalyst for the growth and development of the lives of our people and the country as a whole. We further note that local economic development can lessen disparities between the rich and the poor. It can add stock to the locally created jobs. It increase overall private sector involvement and investment, improve the information flows with investors and developers, and it increases the consistency and confidence in which the local economic strategy can be implemented. Number 2, local economic development is one of the key development strategies pursued by localities in South Africa. Local economic development is a core local government mandate, which was nationally conceptualized as allowing the pursuit of both socio-economic redress and economic development of this country. Honorable Speaker, unfortunately, despite the significant support put into the applied local economic field for nearly 20 years, results have been very modest. Several concerns are raised in various corners about the lack of implementation of the adopted strategies. The Southern African region experiences a relatively high influx of immigration into South Africa. This is actually creating a very high contestation in the local space. The non-availability of economic data related to the parties involved in local economic development is also an issue. Lastly, majority of our municipalities are failing in providing adequate support to develop local economy. Therefore, the House to resolve, number 1, to fast-track the consolidation of the economic data, including the detailed information of people and enterprises involved in various local economies. Number 2, all municipalities must have functional LED offices as well as a full complement of the staff. COCTA is to present and implement a realistic plan to deal with the challenges, including the migration, which is causing some challenges in the local space. House further resolves government to strengthen partnership to various levels to mitigate local challenges affecting local economic development. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Anil Kumar. Honorable members, we note the motion and it will be debated at a later stage in accordance with Rule 133(1). We now call upon Honorable Nyalambisa.
Greetings, Honorable Speaker and the House at large. Honorable Speaker, I move without notice in terms of Rule 130 that the House note that on the 18th of February 2023, in or about 22 hours, there was an unknown gunman that knocked at the homesteads of two elderly women, Nomchato Mbanzana and Nombelekwana Nomendile Mzukwa. Also note that the two elderly women innocently opened their doors to these perpetrators and were shot and killed instantly. Be made aware that the incident occurred at Emnyameni village, Eskangalala administrative area, Tsendane under Mnguma local municipality. This morning, Honorable Speaker, sivuka ngomphanga, the death of Miss Mandi Samvoko, who was working as SAS exam in Mount Frey, seemed to have been brutally murdered and her body put inside her buggy that was parked near Mbodleni Primary School, wrapped with a plastic and a blanket. Honorable Speaker, understand that the ANC and Women's Caucus condemns gender-based violence and femicide against women and children. That is a social ill that has no room in our society. Not only does GBVF occur in our workplaces and churches, but also our homes. Notes that the ANC 55th National Conference affirmed the NDP 2030, which clearly states that, open quote, people living in South Africa must feel free and safe in their homes, schools, places of work, and they must enjoy a community life free of fear, close quote. Notes that when it comes to GBV, there is no room for complaisance and calls on police and criminal justice system to ensure that perpetrators of these heinous acts are reported, charged, and brought to book. The House affirmed that any form of violence against women and children, be it physical, emotional, and sexual, is an affront of our basic decency and humanity and a gross violation of women and children's fundamental human rights, and there can never be an excuse whatsoever for ruthlessly kill innocent and unarmed women. We recognize that the battle cannot be left to the police and courts alone, as families, communities, organizations, and more importantly, organ of people power have to lead from the front as perpetrators live with communities. Therefore, resolve condemn these acts in a strongest manner and plead with communities to unite with law enforcement agencies with the objective of uprooting these social ills in our society. The House conveyed deepest condolences to the families which lost their loved ones and wish them strength as they go through this ordeal. The House implores government to work collaboratively to ensure the provision of psychosocial support for victims of gender-based violence. We further call for each and every institution to rise and mobilize every street, every community, every church, and every family to join the fight against murder and violation of women and children by men. Far too many lives of women and children have been lost as a result of gender-based violence and femicide in our country. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Nyalambisa. Honorable members, I put the motion without notice for adoption.
Agreed. Agreed.
Thank you. We now call upon Honorable Stevenson.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I give notice that I will move in terms of Rule 131 that this House, noting the latest quarterly crime statistics for October to December 2022, released on the 17th of February this year, show that a tidal wave of violent crime continues to sweep over the province, fueling a climate of fear, heartbreak, and sorrow. That behind these bloody statistics lie broken families, orphaned children, traumatized women, and hunger due to the loss of breadwinners. The statistics show that the murder continues its upward trend. The Eastern Cape has the highest per capita murder rate in the country, jumping from 19.7 last quarter to 22.5 per 100,000. That in the 3 months under review, 1,501 people were slaughtered across the province, a 15.1% increase compared to the same period last year. That 7 Eastern Cape police stations are now in the top 30 for murder. That the massive spike in mass killings is a horror story, with 117 people murdered in just 48 incidents in the province. That these figures are expected to jump even higher in the next quarter as the spate of mass killings recently recorded in the media are not included in these statistics. That the war of terror against women also continues unabated, with a rise of 9.3% in rape cases, totaling 2,100 over the three months period in review. This is an average of roughly 1 woman raped every hour in our province alone. That the carjacking has increased by 46.6% to 548 cases, with KwaZulu, New Brighton, Motherwell and Kwadwezi as the provincial hotspots. Likewise, truck hijacking is up 38.5%, with Mount Road, Motherwell, Algoa Park and Swartkops all hotspots. That Gqeberha has become the hijack capital of the Eastern Cape. People are not even safe in their homes anymore, with robberies at residential properties up 13.3%. The ongoing gang violence in Humansdorp and the northern areas of Gqeberha that has claimed countless lives. Therefore resolves that the Provincial Commissioner of SAPS, together with the Department of Community Safety, tables a comprehensive plan in the Portfolio Committee of Community Safety, which clearly spells out measures to arrest the climate of lawlessness in the Eastern Cape within 30 days. 2, that a full review is done of all police stations in the province with regard to resources and manpower, and that all relevant shortcomings be addressed as a matter of urgency. This includes, but is not limited to, repairing dysfunctional holding cells, providing or repairing police vehicles, providing and or repairing generators and filling all critical vacant posts. 3, that visible policing be stepped up in hotspot areas. 4, that the use of new technology such as drones, CCTV cameras, and ShotSpotter be investigated. And 5, that a concerted effort be made by the relevant authorities to bring the perpetrators of these heinous crimes to justice, and that the full might of the law be brought to bear upon them. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Stevenson. Honorable members, we note that motion and it will be debated at a later stage in accordance with Rule 133.1. Thank you. That concludes the notices of motions, honorable members. We will now go to member statements. I have received 3 member statements. That is from Honorable Fihlani, Honorable Van Buchenrode, as well as Honorable Madikizela. Those are the only 3. Yes. So let us start, Honorable Fihlani. The 3-minute rule applies, and then we will allow the executive the 15 minutes, which the acting premier will then direct. Over to you, Honorable Fihlani.
The ANC welcomes and supports the debate on the International Women's Day as a call for a forward march towards a total women liberation and emancipation. As this annual event will be celebrated internationally on the 8th of March of 2023, the African National Congress lends its support not only to this day and the celebrations that will take place, but to the entire women emancipation movement and the struggles that it is still pursuing. The women emancipation struggles have been long and protracted. It has seen better and worse days there and have been starts and stops, but out of all, it has endured and still continues. We are saying that it must continue because as long as there is still subtle discrimination of women based on their race, class, gender, and may I add, sexual orientation in our social and workplaces, the struggle has no alternative but to continue. Women are subjected to careless and brutal murders and rapes in the continent and the world on the daily, if not hourly basis. It is distressing to witness countless scores of women and children subjected to brutal wars in the parts of the continent and the world whose end result is more starvation and misery to the victims. It cannot be that the 21st century and in a fast modernizing world, there are women in the world who are denied the right to education and other empowerment opportunities through some backward cultural and religious practices that are informed by nothing else but male chauvinism. In that very same breath, I would like to incredibly erroneous of the ANC, incredible, bad the honors of the ANC, not to mention the sterling work and performance of superior standard as evidenced by the South African women's cricket side, also known as the Proteas women. They have reached the ICC Women's T20 World Cup final after beating England by the 6 runs at Newlands Cricket Ground last week. The Proteas ladies are the first senior national cricket team to progress to the ICC World Cup final, although they were defeated by Australia in the finals. However, we are enormously proud of our ladies. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Fislani. Honorable Van Boegenrode.
Honourable Speaker and colleagues, good morning. All protocol observed. We have just came out of another deadly festive season on our roads, whereby the carnage continues unabatedly, and in which 1,211 people has lost their lives nationally. We extend our sincere condolences to the family who's lost loved ones over the past festive season. Against this backdrop, RTMC has also identified 2 stretches of roads on the N2 within the Eastern Cape as the most dangerous roads in South Africa. These stretches of roads are between East London and Umtata, 231 kilometers. The other stretch is between Umtata and Kokstad, 188 kilometers. This study of RTMC was conducted over a 3-year period. In closer inspection on our road fatalities per province on a year-to-year basis, the Eastern Cape have recorded a slight reduction of 2.4% in the year of 2022-2023, with an amount of 5 fewer deaths that came out of a total of 210 recorded in the year 2021-2022. Comparing the Eastern Cape fatalities of 205 with that of the Western Cape province, which recorded the highest decrease of fatalities of 36.7% for the year 2022-2023 season. This only amounted to 131 fatalities, but with a reduction of 76 less fatalities in the year recorded in 2021-2022. This high reduction in the Western Cape can be attributed to the fully fledged 24 traffic hour law enforcement service, better management and resources allocation, better law enforcement on their roads. The Western government understands the urgency of now to deliver and improve service delivery to its citizens. The DA in this province has called the Department of Transport to roll out a fully fledged 24-hour traffic law enforcement for years. But there's clearly no urgency for both the political and administrative leadership. Just imagine if we should roll out 24-hour traffic law enforcement. It will save lives, improve our conditions of our roads. Madam Speaker, we are approaching again an Easter holiday festive season. And I'm calling on the MEC of Safety and Transport to urgently implement 24-hour traffic law enforcement on our roads for better law enforcement and also to stop the carnage on our roads. Madam Speaker, to you, I'm calling on the MEC today to inform this House when will 24-hour traffic law enforcement service be rolled out in this province. Lives depend on it. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Van Buchenrode. Honorable Madikizela.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On the 12th January 2023, media published a crisis that is on the scholar transport of this province. The EFF wishes to establish the amount of budget that is allocated for the scholar transport and its expenditure up to this far. The EFF wishes to establish the tender system that has been, whether it's still applicable in 2023. I wish to establish into a verification, is it working properly to the benefit of this industry of taxi people, because we are told upon our research that the verification even verifies the distance, while the tender on the tender the distance was already there. So it's very rare that the distance from where the learners are taken to the school can change. We wish to establish whether the late payment of the scholar transport service providers, is it going to change anytime soon? Is there any intervention that has been done? We also wish to be taken into confidence on whether the government, provincial government, has a crisis in terms of a budget deficit, or we can be guaranteed that there is not a deficit in the government department. We also wish to establish whether the current statistics of violence in the taxi industry, does it affect now the scholar transport as things stands. So we also wish to check whether there is a clear program of ensuring that there is no corruption within the scholar transport, as we are also, upon the research, we have found out that there is almost 1,538 invoices that have not been paid up to this far. We want to also emphasize that if this industry is not taken serious, it will cause a serious crisis in the province, as is the only mode of transport that most of the people in this province utilize. So those are the issues the Speaker we wish to raise as the organization and the EFF that cares about the black majority in this province. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Madikizela. I will now hand over to the Acting Premier, MEC Mvoko. You have 15 minutes to respond.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Greetings to you and greetings to the members of this august House, ladies and gentlemen. I think the first statement by Honorable Deputy Chief Whip, Honorable Speaker, speaks volumes, and I think it is a matter that we all support, given the attempts that were done by our government and also by this House in ensuring that the matter pertaining to the rights of women and equity when it comes to women have been addressed in all of those facets. So we support and agree with her in that. I'm sure not only is the team, the cricket team, but we also saw in the previous year the soccer team. So we can see a good progress when it comes to that. The statements, it's unfortunate that when you raise something that is very important, you downplay progress in it, which I think is what the honorable member talking about the roads and transport is doing. Because firstly, he must appreciate that the fact that there's been an increase, a decrease in the province in terms of fatalities. And that decrease talks to the attempts by the department in addressing the serious challenge we are facing when it comes to road fatalities, especially during the festive season and also in the long weekends or the weekends where we have like the Easter weekend, etc., etc. It's unfortunate that he also downplays it and compares it to the Western Cape. And I thought he would first appreciate that there's a decrease. It means something is being done, and further make proposals on how the department could actually perform better, but is doing none of that. The 24-hour traffic, this is a matter that was raised by the same Democratic Alliance, I think, in the previous calendar year. And that matter, the Honorable MEC appreciated their proposal and promised that this is a matter he would look at, but he can only look at this matter of a 24-hour traffic control dependent on what is exposed to him in terms of finances. And I think that the Honorable MEC raised that matter. And the decrease is an indication of the attempts by the Honorable MEC in addressing that, if you could have seen through the festive season, where he was actually conducting roadblocks throughout the province and doing that 24-hour traffic control. So it's not a new matter. It's a matter that's been raised with us by the executive, and the Honorable MEC is addressing that matter. On scholar transport, this matter, Honorable Speaker, the Premier has reported on numerous occasions on this matter. The matter has been taken seriously, to the extent that the Premier met with the taxi operators on this matter in the previous calendar year, met with Treasury, met with transport, and met with education, brought us all together in an attempt to avert, if you would remember, a strike by the taxi industry. And that strike was averted. And that intervention by the Premier is an indication that this matter is being taken seriously. So I'm not sure what's the basis of assuming that the matter is not being taken seriously by the Honorable Member. The tender system will exist, I must say, Honorable Speaker, for as long as we have the PFMA, the MFMA. It's not a matter that you just stand up and say it must be scrapped and everybody scraps it. It's not a matter that is dependent on the Premier. It's a matter that is dependent on the whole government. I think there is an appreciation of the fact that the tender system creates challenges for us, but it is still here, and it will not be done away with tomorrow as the Honorable Member thinks we can. And lastly, Treasury came to the party in assisting the department during a time when it was struggling to pay the taxi operators, and that is one of the reasons why today, that strike was averted, because there was money made available. Of course, the numbers when it comes to the learners to be ferried increases and changes almost every year. Whether the number that we have here in the legislature and the number that they have in transport and the number that they have in education are correct, it depends on how those numbers could be consolidated and coordinated by the two departments. But also there is a role to be played by by the schools, the school principals, and the communities at large. This is not a very easy matter when it comes to scholar transport, Honorable Speaker, I must say. Fortunately, I've been in that field, and I know that there are very many not so coming together when it comes to the figures to be ferried when it comes to our learners. But it's a matter that is receiving attention, and we hope that in the next financial year, we will be, the two departments will be able to come together and speak the same language when it comes to the number of learners to be ferried. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you so much, Acting Premier. You have left us with a few minutes. Thank you. It's usually unheard of in that respect. I will now ask the Secretary. So, members, that concludes the issue on members' statements and the response from the Premier. I will now ask the Secretary to read the first subject for discussion. Over to you, Secretary.
Matter of public importance, subject for discussion in terms of Rule 126, commemorating International Women's Day, #Embrace Equity.
We call upon Honorable Camilio Benjamin. Your 20 minutes will start now.
Honourable Speaker, Chief Whip of the Majority Party, members of the Provincial Legislature, the Honourable Acting Premier and his executive, members of our community and the Eastern Cape Province, I greet you all. On this month of March 2023, we are celebrating International Women's Day. That will be on the 8th of March 2023. Under the theme Embrace Equity. The idea to make International Women's Day come from a woman called Clara Zetkin, a communist activist and advocate for women's rights. She suggested the idea in 1910 at an international conference of working women in Copenhagen. There were women from 17 countries and they agreed on a suggestion. Honourable Speaker, today the world marks International Women's Day, and here at home we should thank the legislator for allowing us an opportunity to have this debate as part of our international celebrations. On this day, the province should express solidarity with women affected by poverty, conflict, and diseases. We call on the women and the children of those countries affected by conflict. We cannot justify our continued inaction in the face of human suffering resulting from countries in conflict. The global efforts have been responsible for the progress made by humanity in the fight against the oppression of women. This day is important to raise awareness about women's rights and gender equality. Even today, women are treated lesser than men, especially in the rural and more rural areas globally. We need to educate and spread men about the situation of women across the globe and spread the message of gender equality. One needs to understand women's rights issues and the current scenario. Engaging and sharing through thought-provoking ideas that can be one way to understand the status of women in society and raise awareness about the issues faced by them. Honourable Speaker, the theme Embrace Equity that bridges the gap when it comes to the digital access of women globally. The technology has the power to unite everyone and promote equality. But once gender divide gets embedded in this, it unleashes a digital gap in the lower middle income countries. Having access to digital tools and literacy can empower women globally to gain better access to education, health, skills, and livelihood opportunities. Not only it can empower adults and elderly people, but women too do not have basic digital access in comparison to men. Honorable Speaker, I'm not going to take a long time because I know there'll be lots of debates, but as we heard some of the other members speaking, we have got a serious challenge when it comes to the safety of women in our universities, in their homes, all over. Women are not safe anymore. So we need to step up to the plate to make sure that we do much more to make sure that we are safer in our areas where we are. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, the world has attested a significant shift in both women and society's thoughts about women's equality and emancipation. With more women in the boardroom, greater equality in legislative rights, and increased critical mass of women's visibility as impressive role models in every aspect of life. One old thing that women gained through equality, the unfortunate part is that women are not paid equally to that of their male counterparts. Women still are not present in equal numbers in businesses or politics or globally. Women's education, healthcare, and violence against them is worse than that of men. Let us make a difference and think globally and act locally. So let's make every day an International Women's Day. Let's do our bit to ensure that the future of our girls is bright, equal, safe, and rewarding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Camillo Benjamin, the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Women's Caucus. I call upon the DA, Honorable Zibonda.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, Honorable Acting Premier, members of this august House, members of staff, as led by the Secretary of the Legislature, and members of the public, I greet you all. On International Women's Day, the world is celebrating social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. The day also marks a call to action for accelerating gender parity. Significant activity is witnessed worldwide as groups come together to celebrate women's achievements and rally for women's equality, to educate and raise awareness for women's equality, to call for positive change and for advancing women, to lobby for accelerated gender parity. Sithathe lithuba ke somlomo sikhahlele kumaqhawekazi kwihlabathi lonke abe negalelo ekufezekiseni nokulwela inkululeko, amalungelo nokulingana kwamanina. We stand here today as these generations because we stand on the shoulders of giants who walked the difficult path and ensured that our path is easier than theirs. We have a duty now to pass on to the next generations a world that is safer and better than ours. As a nation, we have adopted a social agenda, channeling a significant amount of effort and resources towards identifying vulnerable groups in society, crafting legislation that would protect their interests, and development and implement programs and strategies to support them. Today, the vulnerabilities of women are still evident. Even though many programs aimed at improving the well-being of vulnerable groups have been implemented, less effort has been put into establishing the extent to which service delivery has had an impact on the situation of these vulnerable groups over time. The recent crime that took place in Alice, where a female student was killed and another one raped and assaulted, is one of too many that women continue to suffer due to service delivery failures. The spot where the incident took place has been a hotspot of violent crimes for a long time. Since I was a student in Fort Hare, today still there is no patrols done by the police in that vicinity, and no proper lighting has been installed by the municipality. This shows that our government lacks the will to find solutions on the issues that affect our communities. The ones who suffer most are women. Speaker, we ought to recognize the contribution of women and girls around the world who are leading the charge on climate change adaptation, mitigation, and response to build a more sustainable future for all. Advancing gender equality in the context of climate crisis and disaster risk reduction is one of the greatest global challenges of the 21st century. The issues of climate change and sustainability we have had and will continue to have a severe and lasting impact on our environment, economic, and social development. Those who are among the most vulnerable and marginalized experience the deepest impact. Women are increasingly being recognized as more vulnerable to climate change impacts than men, as they constitute the majority of the world's poor and are more dependent on natural resources which climate change threatens the most. Dr. Barhow, speaking on the UN, stressed that all parties have a contribution to make in ensuring that a just transition for women through gender-responsive climate policies and actions, and called for global investment and special measures to reinforce women's skills and resilience and remove barriers to their participation and leadership in climate-smart sustainable development. At the same time, women girls are effective and powerful leaders and change makers. Honorable Speaker, even though we have made strides in fighting for equality, that violence against women and femicide remain a threat to our existence. In South Africa, every 8 hours a woman is killed, and half these murders happen at the hands of their intimate partners. This makes our country's femicide rate 4 times higher than the global rate. Indeed, domestic violence causes so much pain than visible marks and of bruises and scars. It is devastating to be abused by someone that you love and think loves you in return. We must refuse to allow this to be the order of the day. We should refuse to live in a province where the lives of women can be taken and people continue with business as normal. We should refuse to have women being forced to give sexual favors because they are in need of a job. Their voices must be heard and listened to regardless of the position which they hold. We must continue to look into the opportunities as well as the constraints to empower women and girls to have a voice and be equal players in decision-making related to climate change as well. And sustainability is essential for sustainable development and greater gender equity. Without gender equality today, a sustainable future and an equal future remains beyond our reach. We must continue to highlight the necessity of the full, equal, and meaningful participation and leadership of women and girls at all levels of decision-making in change. Recent achievements of our national women's teams with a significant number of players hailing from this province is only but an example of the incredible work of women that transcends through sports, arts, and politics, among other areas. We cannot forget the dedicated women who stand on roadsides selling fruits that have produced graduates, struggling parents who wake up each morning to put food on the table. This is part of their resilience, and they need not suffer. As a province, we must make necessary investment to close the massive gaps in women and girls' access to and control key resources. Second, to ensure that structures and decision-making around issues that affect women are institutionalized. We must create a space for young women and girls. Madam Speaker, the DA calls on the Premier of the province to ensure that all departments in the province have a plan to improve economic opportunities for women, because a woman in charge of her economic future is a woman with power over her own life. If we can ensure that women and girls have tangible control over their futures and well-being, that they no longer earn less money, have less power, or make fewer gains, we can help create a world where women, girls, men, boys, all have a chance to thrive. The United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, founded on the principle of leaving no one behind, call for transformative shifts, integrated approaches, and innovative solutions to overcome the structural barriers to sustainable development. Innovation and technology provide unprecedented opportunities to reach those who are most likely to be left behind. Government should take a partnership approach to accelerate industry-wide change and remove the barriers to women and girls' advancement in innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. Industry-wide collaboration ensures that future innovations take a gender-responsive approach and to promote women as innovators with shared goal of achieving gender equality and women's empowerment. As I conclude, Honorable Speaker, Gloria Steinman, a world-renowned feminist, journalist, and activist, once explained, and I quote, "The story of women's struggle for equality belongs to no single feminist, nor to any one organization, but to the collective efforts of all who care about human rights." Close quote. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Honorable Zibonda. I call upon Honorable Gaia from the ANC. I see she was just directed to go back to her seat. I'm not quite sure what happened there, Chief Whip. Honorable Gaia, your 18 minutes starts now.
I think he was just trying to manage me, but nevertheless, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. May I take this opportunity, Dibulise, Acting Premier, members of the Executive Council, members of e-Provincial Legislature, senior government officials, and special guests, Ezipha Phezulu, Siyabulisa. Honorable Speaker, the month of March marks as a very significant site for the women of the whole world and our country to reflect and advance on numerous strides deliberately driven to undermine discrimination, biasness, and stereotypes peddled to degrade women of the world. Honorable Speaker, South Africa emerged from a dark epoch of apartheid, which was largely characterized by discrimination, whose footprints remain glaring from all fronts of our diverse community, despite hard efforts to uproot discrimination in favor of previously marginalized. It is during the same epoch wherein we have witnessed inspiring scenes that strongly asserted that the will of a united people can never be defeated. This is why, as the African National Congress, we join hands with all structures and organizations fighting discrimination, particularly against women. Consistent with the declaration by the United Nations, which proclaimed the 8th of March